Is it Linus?
Yes.
In Lithuania?
Yes.
What time is it there?
It's 1 o'clock in the night.
Oh, well, thanks for staying up late to call us.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
So,
Go ahead, you're on the air.
yeah, okay. So, my question is to you, is that if basically your show like this, I heard because there's a harm that religion does. It's like it harms somebody, and I agree with that. Now, but when religious people say to atheists, like Stalin was an atheist and he did bad things, Richard Dawkins says he didn't do it in the name of atheism.
Correct.
Right.
But when you ask, what is atheism? When you ask atheists, what is atheism? They say it's a lack of belief in God.
Yep.
So
Right.
My question: how is it possible to do anything
You can't.
in a lack of belief of anything? Like
You can't.
I will kill you in the name of a lack of belief of unicorns.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah, but people don't do that.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're exactly right. Atheism on its own, without adding anything to it, doesn't lead you to anything else. It's a single position on a single issue. There are, though, positions that are consistent with atheism, and when you combine atheism with, for example, humanism, secular humanism, you can reach conclusions about how we interact. And when you take atheism and combine it with ideas that religion necessarily needs to be opposed, you can end up with state-enforced anti-religious regimes, which, while they're not a product directly of atheism, atheism doesn't have any tenets or dogma. There's no book or authority that you can point to that say, look, this says to do this. That's not true for religions. If you look at, for example, Christianity, the Bible flatly endorses slavery, explicitly, and so when people engage in slavery, they can point to the Bible and say, look, this is consistent with the directives that are given to me in my holy book. You just can't do that with atheism.
Yes. So what I'm saying is atheist always escapes a judgment in that way.
Yeah.
Always. It's
the same way.
Position without responsibility.
You know who else escapes judgment? People who are innocent.
Yeah.
It doesn't. You're pointing to this and saying, "Oh, you've got a get out of jail free card." Yes, and you could have one too if you give up the immoral holy books that people keep pointing to say this is what I use to govern my life. Give it up.
Yeah. So I understand, but it's unfair because
No, it's not. Because let me tell you something. You're comparing apples to oranges here because atheism doesn't lead to any conclusion. So you can't decide to commit mass murder on the basis of atheism. You also can't decide to commit mass murder on the basis just of theism. So if all you believe is that some God exists, you're technically a theist. That doesn't get you to anything else.
Correct.
What gets you to something else is some doctrine or dogma that goes with that belief.
Yeah, it's like here's one group that has a rule book that they're going to follow, and here's another group that doesn't have a rule book. You can't point to all the people without a rule book and say that their actions are tied to their lack of a rule book. I mean, you acknowledge this yourself. But if they do have a rule book and they're following it, it's completely fair to point out that what they're doing on behalf of their rule book, if it's immoral, their rule book's to blame.
Okay, I agree, but now I want to turn it around.
Okay.
Okay.
So if a Stalin killed somebody, there is no book in atheism which says it's wrong, and in Christianity there is a book which says not to kill. For example, you can point to it and say you made a wrong.
Correct. I don't say that someone is wrong to kill people because of atheism. You can't get to any conclusion from it. I have other reasons for pointing to why people are wrong. And I don't need a book or a God to know that it's wrong to kill people.
No, it's not wrong to kill people in America. It's done all the time.
Okay. First of all, we're not just cowboys running around killing people. But the fact. Hang on. I'll let you finish your point. The fact that something happens all the time doesn't have any bearing on whether or not it's actually right or wrong. There are plenty of wrong things that happen all the time.
Yeah, but that's not that point I'm making.
I know.
I'm making when rule like a judge in Texas or wherever rule somebody to be killed because he killed somebody in a court of law.
Yep.
Right.
So he has a death sentence. That's killing, and
Yes.
it's okay in America.
Well,
So,
it is
yeah.
it is legally permissible. Whether or not it's moral is a completely separate question. And there are plenty of people who think that the death penalty is immoral just blanket-wide, and there are others who think that the death penalty is immoral in practice due to limitations of what we can demonstrate and not, and there are other people who are okay with it. It's not a settled question. So whether or not something's legal is completely separate from whether or not it's moral.
okay, so how do you come up with rules what is legal?
Yeah. Oh, with rules that are legal? Go ahead.
Well, that's a complicated question.
Yeah, it's big. Basically, we have a system whereby we have foundational freedoms, and then you begin with every freedom, and then you begin to limit them based on what sort of interactions need to take place. My right to swing my arms around in somebody else's personal space. And you have legislators and you have voting, and sometimes some people vote the wrong way. They vote for things that are not necessarily moral. It happens, and so it's a long process of correcting. If you want to know the bigger question about how do you develop, for example, a secular moral system, it's too big to handle with what time we have left on the show, but if you Google superiority of secular morality, you'll find 2 different talks that I gave on the subject. And also Sam Harris's Moral Landscape outlines one potential pathway to this, although not everybody necessarily agrees with that. But the simple version is we are physical beings in a physical universe, and there are truths about what sort of effects actions have on us. We are forced to share space. Cooperation has been shown to be much more beneficial to all of us than a lack of cooperation. I'd rather not die, and I'd rather not have my stuff taken, and so it's at least in my best interest to set up a system with other people who would rather not die and rather not have their stuff taken, to ensure that we set up a system of laws that discourages and punishes those instances where people are killing and stealing. You begin with very simple ideas like life is generally preferable to death, pleasure is generally preferable to pain, health is generally preferable to sickness. Sometimes those are going to come into conflict. There are lots of complex situations, but there's a lot of simple situations and general rules that we can sort out. And because for any given situation there's a finite set of possible actions, it's pretty easy to look at the consequences of those actions and say, some of these are better than others, which means that there must be some finite set of actions that represent the moral pinnacle for that situation. I mean, there's a lot that goes into this, and it's much, much more complex than thou shalt not, which is the oversimplified version of morality that far too many people adhere to, and then inject their own opinions and preferences and do what's in their own best interest without perhaps looking at the broader picture. It's a complicated landscape, and it's certainly not something we're going to answer in 2 minutes on the show.
Yeah, I agree. So I agree with what you say, but what you're saying is that, in fact, you can go to heaven and you will still need the same rules of cooperation and to be, for heaven to be heaven, that everybody would be okay with.
Well, I don't.
Nobody would insult everybody and so on.
I don't have
general
any
philosophical rules for any community to be okay.
I don't believe in a heaven.
Yeah, I understand, but anywhere there are conscious beings, they would need to follow the rules you set out to be harmonious and not to kill each other and be happy and so on.
If they're a social species, yes, they're going to need some social rules.
So you didn't come up with anything new, it's just general logic.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm not claiming that I've come up with anything earth-breaking or earth-shattering. I might have. Here's the thing. Neither has, for example, the Bible. Nobody needed thou shalt not kill. People understood about not killing other people long beforehand.
That's not true. That's not true.
No.
It's not true? So
killed all kinds of people in all kinds of rituals.
So you're saying that before Moses got the Ten Commandments, nobody knew that it was wrong to kill people?
Yeah, not everybody, not nobody, but many barbaric nations killed young people. Just, for example, in my country, in Lithuania, before Christianity, they would take a virgin and throw below the building and kill her, that the building would be strong in the future.
Well, you know
So,
what? There's a lot of passages in the Bible that talk about them sacrificing virgins.
yeah,
That's even after Moses got
I'm
the
just-
Ten Commandments.
I'm
So-
baffled by this claim.
I mean-
So you're pointing to specific incidences in even the modern world. But what you said was that before Moses got the commandment, thou shalt not kill, nobody had any understanding that they shouldn't kill people.
I didn't say nobody, but many nations.
No,
No,
no.
That's absurd. The Hammurabi Code was out before then, and it includes prohibitions against killing. And the only thing, you know what you need to have to understand that you shouldn't kill people? A brain.
Yeah.
All you need is to be alive and not want to die to understand why it's wrong to kill people. This
Yeah.
stuff is not nearly as hard as some people make it out to be.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah, but
no. Think about this. I mean, you accept the fact that we, at one point, when there were very few humans on the planet, we roved around the planet in hunter-gatherer bands of anywhere from 50 to about 150 people, right?
yeah.
Okay. So, what do you think would happen to somebody that killed somebody in a hunter-gatherer band?
I don't know.
Well, either somebody in the band would kill that guy who killed someone for no reason, or he would be ejected from the group. And you know
But
what?
what if you kill somebody from other group?
Well, that happens sometimes.
Yes,
But-
So
there is
normal.
there is a lot of problems when you're talking about in-group and out-group relations where
Yeah.
people can rationalize violating the rights of the other group.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's how we got slavery. But the thing is, if you ever want to know why slavery was wrong, all you had to do was ask a slave. If you ever want to know why mistreating someone in an out-group is wrong, you just need to talk to the individuals in that out-group.
Yeah.
And this stuff happened. Yes, we didn't come from a whole bunch of insular communities. We came from warring communities, but they also intermarried and interbred. So
Yeah.
let me just say that since none of us here are experts, I find it patently absurd to suggest that people didn't understand that killing was wrong until Moses got the Ten Commandments in any significant sense. It's just bizarre. So do some research, see if you can find out what those ancient people thought, and if they were just basically sanctioning murder wholesale, that'd be interesting to know.
Okay, so why do Muslims throw stones at women who were like unfaithful to their husbands?
Because their religion says
today.
so.
Yeah, because...
So why do Christians do not do that? So
because
they
Christianity has been dragged kicking and screaming into the 21st century, or at least into the 19th century, by the secularist people who have surrounded them, who said, you know what, we know your holy book says that you can have slaves and that you can beat them and how much you can buy them for, and we know that your holy book tells you how to trick even your own fellow Jews into being your slaves forever and driving a spike through their ear and marking them so, and we know that your holy book says all these nasty things about women having to keep their mouths shut and being subservient to men, but we're not going to tolerate that shit, so y'all better change. And Christianity changed.
Why Islam doesn't change?
Because Islam hasn't had that same sort of influence everywhere, but it has in some places, which is why there are Muslims living in some countries like the United States who are now, I don't know, getting reality shows and getting tattoos. It's going to happen. Eventually the world will be secularized and rationalized, and religion will take the place of a kind of backward activity, and the beliefs will be relegated to a tier alongside the earth is flat and nobody knew that murder was illegal or was wrong before Moses. That's where we're headed.
Well, it's absolutely. For example, in Japan, it's a very developed country, but women are very much treated very badly. And for example, when a food is distributed for homeless people, only men gather because women are like shunned. And it's not a Christian country, and it's very developed, and it's very 21st century. So you don't. Well, you want to see what you want to see. You want to see like everything is getting secularized and equal and so on. But
no,
if
you don't have. That's not the result. That's not the result of humanism in action. There's inequality everywhere. Pointing, this is the funny thing, is that when you criticize somebody's religion, inevitably what they'll do is they'll point to other things that are worse. You can point to worse things all day long, and it doesn't do anything to elevate the status of the religion that you accept. What I'm talking about, I'm not sanctioning the way women are treated in Japan. I'm opposed to that as well. I'm talking about a humanistic, rational world of equality, which we don't have anywhere. So there's no country you can point to and say, oh, well, here's what happens when you have an atheist nation. It just doesn't exist yet. What you can do is you could start off like you did, pointing to Stalin, but that's not the sort of principles of secular humanism, which is the sort of interactions that I'm advocating. You have nothing to point to.
What we do have to point to are things like the Pew Research poll that looks at religiosity in nations and measures of societal health.
Yep.
And the most secular nations have the highest rating of societal health.
And I apologize, Linus, but they're actually putting the credits up, so the show's over. Feel free to call in next week or some other time and discuss it some more. I appreciate it. Thanks so much for everybody for showing up this week.
Yes, thank you.
We'll be back next time. And to the people who didn't get through on the phone, I'm sorry. It's a good show, but try and call another week. Bye-bye.